This is Pivot, and I'm your host, Dr. Talat. In Perception Index, Pakistan is 177 out of 189 countries, which is quite alarming. Pakistan is facing serious branding problem, which is of hostile image that the country carries around the world. Pakistani filmmakers and communication experts are playing a major role in trying to address this issue. To discuss more on the topic, we have with us Mr. Shahzad Nawaz, who is a renowned filmmaker and communication expert in our country. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, when we begin with our issue, do you think Pakistan has in the past faced or is still facing serious image problem?
Oh, absolutely, actually. There's absolutely no denying, and I think in today's world, and if we go to the modern gadgetry and things that we have access to, something as simple and as basic as Google, and you try and type in Pakistan and see what you see. And what you see has a disconnect with what reality is in Pakistan. So there's a huge disconnect. And not to say that in the past the governments have not wanted to do and take lead and bring initiatives for the softer image, but they have not succeeded to this date. And the reason, in my opinion, is the failure to come up with a cohesive policy framework under the ambit of which we are able to narrate the right image and actually first discuss what the right image is and how so. So the basic, where are we, why are we here, how did we get here, where do we want to go, and how do we get there? These basic strategic questions form the premise for the policy framework. So that, in so many ways, I as a professional see missing.
When we talk of solution to problems or addressing these problems, we find that it's media industry or communication industry that is required to be on board to address this problem. Do you see our media industry or communication industry is qualified enough to address this problem?
With 220 million population, I'd die 100 deaths if I were to say that there are no experts in this country. We are equipped, we have the intellectual wealth, we have the artistic depth, we have the tradition of 7,000 years of oration and narration. We have just about everything. The issue is that we do not seek out the opinion of experts, and we miss out on talking to the people who are qualified in perception management, advocacy, or behavioral change communication, image generation, and tools and vehicles of media, whether it is conventional media or digital media, and bring forth the right message. But then, Dr. Saab, what is essentially important is to also first understand that if Pakistan were to be a brand, then we need to first understand what a brand is. In all its manifestation, a brand, simply put, is a promise. So what is that promise that we wish to give to the internal audience? Because the internal audience, which is the citizenry, the people of Pakistan, must not only hear that message, but must also believe in it. There has to be a reason to believe, so they have to consume the message. Not just that, once they believe, they themselves become the brand stewards or the brand ambassadors, and then take forward the message to the external audiences, which is our the extrinsic outlook we wish to create. So we have not necessarily addressed this holistic issue that we face today, and it is also for a fact that we do not understand brand and brand's different value sets, or the architecture of brand, what composite is a brand.
Right, when we talk of, you said there's no dearth of experts.
None.
And so do you think they know that this is the role that they have to play in trying to address this problem? Are they, up for the role?
Oh, absolutely. Tell me, the other day there was a recent survey by Gallup and another index that said that Pakistan, I was listening to your introduction, the preamble, where you shared with us where we stood on the perception index. To begin with, the perception index is not our doing or have been done by us. But on the contrary, if we talk about the Human Development Index, which was crafted by a Pakistani, Dr. Mehboob, for the United Nations, we don't even fare good there. But my point is, why must I rely on information and indices which are not indigenous to me? Why must I let of XYZ think tank sitting somewhere with having no root in Pakistan, with having no understanding of my culture, my people, my values and my tradition, actually give me a ranking which I totally disagree with? They're doing it because there is a void, and no void remains a void forever. It gets filled, if not by your own narrative, then by somebody else's.
Okay, I'm told to have a break here.
Okay.
We'll be right back after the break. You actually produced a film in which I think you acted to
Yes.
Chambeli.
Yes.
So when I looked at that, the work that you did, it was a great film that I, witnessed, watched. What was the underlying message in Chambeli? I believe that it was, since it addressed corruption and various issues that our political elites have. So do you think this was a kind of branding?
Well, actually, no, because I believe that a man who claims to be apolitical has no space in a society, because man and animal are both supposed to be political. Man more so than the animal, because man has the ability to think. But more than that, the difference between an animal versus the Homo sapiens is that humans can dream. Dream itself is a manifestation of politics. Politics is about community, about people, about community rights, betterment, development. So Chambeli was the first political narrative, the first political film in Pakistan. And the reason for it to be there, because I felt that I, as a filmmaker, as a writer, as an actor, as a producer, I must contribute towards defining and speaking to the newer generation of how important the democratic process is if we were to come together as a nation and grow. That was a message which had nothing to do with branding as such, but actually saying that the power lies within you, for it is you who decide under democracy who you wish to bring. What I tried to do in 2013 eventually came full circle, and we saw that change actually come in 2018. How they fare will be their onus and responsibility. As for me, I did my part in helping them come and where they are today, this government.
Some people are apprehensive of, when you show Pakistan as a corrupt, maybe a country that is not well governed.
Right.
So it is actually negative branding.
Absolutely.
So I'm actually talking in that context.
Very true. Then we should finish all courts, the judicial system in Pakistan, because eventually people will get caught for the crimes they commit. We should abolish the system and go back to the earliest caliphates, where there was no concept of a jail in the Islamic jurisprudence, in the Islamic society. And there was a social boycott, if you look at history. So my point is, even if it's negative, how will you stop the headlines in the newspapers? How do you stop corruption when the point, a promise is towards the better, but for that the ingredients have to be right. But how do you, Dr. Saab, expect me to be the ostrich and tell you that there is no moral bankruptcy, there is no intellectual bankruptcy, there is no artistic bankruptcy? When I see it all around me, there's no nepotism, there's no despondency. I think the only way you can go and fight is when you have a true situation assessment. So whether it is, the old military doctrines like the stealth, surprise, and speed, and the fifth generation where we stand today, there's one thing that hasn't changed, which is the human action and reaction. Theories change, doctrines change. Similarly, the ills of the society exist, and how can I turn a blind eye? That means I am not part of the solution. And because I'm not part of the solution, I am part of that problem.
That's fine. Now, when we talk of negative branding, or branding for that matter, who do you think are stakeholders, real serious stakeholders? Because there's a kind of problem that who should do that? Media, communication experts, government, civil society, who?
Well, it is a collaborative. First of all, any endeavor must be spearheaded by a leader, but must be followed through by the vanguards, and the vanguards in turn were their followers or people in the hierarchy who are under them. So the biggest stakeholder for this is the state, and the state through its government. that keeps coming, and they're comprised of different people and different political parties over time. What you see is a failure. And then confusion. Failure because we haven't been able to come together as a country with a cohesive policy and understand that the pivots come together. There are hubs and there are spokes which come together and converge with one single objective of the nation state. In our country, Pakistan, we have not understood the implication of communication, branding, with services, with promise, with governance and delivery, right? And tourism, and all the other facets and aspects which are necessary for the promise that I said of the brand to be complete. We are talking about when in the region people have moved and initiated ministries such as the Ministry of Happiness. Imagine, they're gauging happiness of their people. Over here, we are still short on fulfilling our obligation as a government, which is chartered as a social contract in our constitution. Life, property, opportunity, health, right? So how do you expect this brand to exist without legs? It can't. It's not augmented reality. It is reality. Therefore, there has to be connect. They say when you go to a country as a tourist or a visitor, there are only 3-4 things that you can look at and then assess and create a perception. The road system, the health system, the justice system, and the education system. And I don't need to say any more to you. If I were a foreigner who came to Pakistan and drove one length in our traffic in any of our cosmopolitan city, leave alone the secondary cities, what kind of impression, let me ask you, would you have of us as people? Therefore, this has to do with legislation and law and enforcement of law, which would have resulted in branding. So our people, not our policymakers, and their failure to understand that this is in close net, that one must weave, how do we wish to be perceived internally first, and then accepted externally,
Okay.
right?
When we talk of you said it's collaborative.
Yes,
we all have to be on board. Do you think serious leadership has to be aware of this problem, branding problem, and of course they have to seek advice from experts? Do you think they are on board?
No, they're not. I'm sitting here. I've spent 50 years of my life, and I've excelled in everything that I've done. Do you see me anywhere in the mainframe? Am I that difficult to find? In a country where we have immense population of intelligent people. I'm not saying I'm one of them, but I do consider myself of having some experience under my belt. The reason is the failure in times when we have introduced in 2010 the 18th Amendment, and we have devolved culture and education to provinces who weren't ready. So there was no transitionary period. So there's a gap, right? On top of that, in this day and age, in 2018, we still have something called the Ministry of Information, as opposed to having something called the Ministry of Communication. So don't you see that there is a disconnect in understanding? The paradigm has changed, it has shifted, and we are still in the ages and era of the 80s. So the disconnect is there. Vested state and non-state actors take advantage of this and thus enforce their hybrid war through different narrative mechanisms and tools upon us, whereby and because of which we start doubting our own narrative, which, by the way, again, is in conflict because we have not had the cohesion of that, also synergy of thought, and where we want to go ahead with it.
Yeah. I'm asked to have a break. We'll be right back after a short while. Coming back to the same question, when we talk of people on board, the important stakeholder is media. What do you think media can play a role, or how media will help the government to achieve this branding Pakistan's role?
Isn't it too late? You know, this is a very classic case that you bring forth. If you talk about electronic media, So the child came before the parent. Private television enterprise came in Pakistan, and the regulation and the regulators came later. It was a knee-jerk reaction to our 1999 Kargil conflict, and we wanted a quick fix. And quick fixes are not with long-term plans, right? So to expect for-profit enterprises, people who are in this as a profession, as a for-profit business, and expect them to be the architects of that brand, I doubt that. It will have to be a state initiative. For one, being the biggest advertiser in Pakistan. And being a biggest advertiser in Pakistan means they have substantial influence over the media. But again, like I said, like I gave you an example of the traffic laws, look at media laws. Even after the amendment of the PEMRA 2002 ordinance, if we know repeatedly that each channel has failed and has been in violation of running that 10% of their airtime on public service messages, what to speak of branding? That's not likely, because the writ and enforcement is an impediment because it's not fallen through. And we need to understand that media is only one part. There will have to be service standards on ground for me to believe in it. A brand must exist on that promise and satisfaction. And that satisfaction comes with a reason to believe, as we would have for any other brand, like a beverage brand or a food brand or anything that you consume. Given that you're exposed to 1,400 messages a day in the traditional form, and now with this handheld in your hand, I believe the number must have gone crazy with maybe 3,000, 4,000 messages a day, and each message fighting for attention. Least of all will be a promise that does not exist on its own two legs. And over here it's the delivery. I will have to believe. Forget all that. Let me ask you this. Pakistan is a brand. Let's forget the external audiences. There are multiple audiences for a brand, right? Let's take Pakistanis as the audience for brand Pakistan. I'm not even allowed to hoist the national flag on my house other than 14th August or 23rd March. You have not given me that, versus look at all other countries where you have given them the freedom. Well, what will it take? All it takes is a law in the parliament, so the rules of business changes, and I, as the real custodian of being a Pakistani, can actually hoist the flag on my car, on my building, and have brands and products. Thanks to China, if things were not mass produced, we would not have seen our Independence Day celebration and the merchandise that comes with it to this extent. How do you expect us to brand when two colors of Pakistani flag, which are hoisted officially, are not of the same color green?
Right.
Just one more thing. How do you speak on brand when your flag is draped vertically in violation of rules described by the Ministry of Interior on a government building on the National Day of Pakistan?
Great. Now, we were trying to find out who is the real stakeholder and who has to steer this initiative.
I offer my services, sir, to you and through you to the government of Pakistan, because I am a reflection of thousands of people who are out there who are willing to work free. The question is, does this government actually believe in real change, or will it actually disappoint us by creating a brand called Naya Pakistan and give us nothing new in return?
Okay. Now, another very important issue that actually is related to, in a way, to branding is the women empowerment. We have a women empowerment index that we find ourselves on 144th out of 145. So this is very alarming too, alongside branding in perception index. So how do you see this women empowerment affecting this branding?
Dr. Saab, you mentioned 144 out of 189?
144 out of 145.
Out of 145.
Yeah.
So we are at and we're on the lowest ebb.
Yes.
So before I answer that, can you tell me in 1947, August 14th, where did we stand on the index? Can you answer me? I guess not.
No.
So we took our freedom beyond these indices. I am adverse to these indices. There are ways, these are ways to subjugate our freedom of thought and our belief in our dreams. I do not subscribe to them because A, I do not know when they originated and under what mandate and charter they originated. And by acknowledging these numbers, where does it lead me? When I have my own tools, which is the educational institutions, the households, where I was supposed to inculcate the same value sets and ethics and reforms that I could bring. And I would not need this. Women empowerment is a buzzword for donors and donor agencies and the Western world. After having lived in the dark ages for far too long, I'm a custodian of 7,000-year-old civilization. I understand civilization. Yes, I do expect that things do go wrong. I do admit as well. But I don't think so it's a serious issue at all. It's just something which I call the media fodder. Anything to bring you down, anything to bring me down, anything to bring this color of white and green in
but
shame.
Don't you think these surveys or these indexes actually contribute somehow to...
It's a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
It's a matter of perspective. If I were to ask you, Dr. Saab, during last 7 days, how many times did you exercise? Can you answer me? In last 7 days, how many times did you exercise? Can you quickly answer me?
Yeah.
Did
3
you?
times, yeah.
How many times?
3 times.
In last 7 days, how many times did you walk longer than usual, faster than usual, took a flight more than usual? Every day? Your answer just changed.
Yeah.
It is the lens and optics of how you frame the question. And research is as good or as bad or as debatable as the person interpreting the top line or the data. And that interpretation is to achieve a certain objective.
Yeah.
So I believe when you put forth this question to me, if I know it looks from your face and expression as if you're running out of time.
The last question.
But real quickly, women empowerment is an issue which is purely our own. It should be there, but we know how to address it without that index.
I would just like you at the end to make concrete suggestions, concrete recommendations for the government with regards to branding Pakistan.
They need to first engage professionals, not people who are close to the current Prime Minister or his hierarchy. As I keep seeing this happening in Islamabad. It should be open access. If I'm there to volunteer to a government that said it represented me, I don't understand the red tape. And what is that fear? I am trying to come and do work for you for free. And I see these impediments, these hindrances. There needs to be a convergence of a conference I passionately call the Emerald Project, where 500, 800 like-minded people converge in the capital, representing different disciplines and expertise and faculties, and put together the paper for a brand called Pakistan. Okay. Otherwise, I still think it's going to be a pipe dream.
Thank you very much, Shahzad Nawaz Saab. You came to our show, and it was a very important topic that you discussed with us. And it was a real pleasure having you here in our show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is for today. Until next week, Allah Hafiz.